Awesome. Good. I'm going to count on one of you guys to let me know that we've got people in the room. So without any further ado, thank you for waiting for us for Coffee with Christy Crew. Happy Friday to all of our ops bosses. We are live streaming only for our ops boss alumni and coaching clients. So we're super happy to have you here. And today we are going to be talking about, remind me of our title. We had a really sexy title.
Does your database distribute dividends?
Does your database distribute dividends, right? We want to make our database a data bank. And so today is truly mastermind. This is not a class. This is not teaching. We want you to participate and share your ideas with us because lots of you do awesome things as well. So I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves real quick, and then we're going to jump in. So Steph, you want to take it away?
Stephanie Brackett, COO of Anderson Hicks Group out of Idaho Falls, Idaho, and an ops boss coach.
How many people are in your database? I didn't ask you guys to prepare this.
16,157.
I love that you knew the answer to that. All right.
It's on my screen right now. I can see it.
Awesome. Okay, Elizabeth, introduce yourself.
Elizabeth Gilbert in Kansas City, Missouri, COO of Ron Henderson and Associates and Ops Boss Coach.
Awesome. Do you know how many are in your database? You probably would have said it if you knew the exact number. You can guesstimate.
7,153.
There you go. All right, Hannah.
Hannah Perkey, CEO of Evelo Team out of Indianapolis, Indiana. We're doing a database cleanup, which I'm sure I'll talk about today, but I think we have about 16,000 that we're paring down.
I love it. Awesome. And Jessica.
Jessica Hubbard from Joplin, Missouri, CEO of Hubbard Realty Group. And
we just lost your connection, but that's okay. You can jump back. We'll jump back on. And we have Sheila Rastinas, who probably doesn't want to introduce herself, but she's our awesome ops boss, making sure that we're in line today. So let's jump in, you guys. I told people we're just going to mastermind. Those of you who haven't been with us for Coffee with Christy before, this is truly just a casual mastermind. What we used to do as coaches is we would get on and go, I need help with this, or I need help with that for my team. And we thought, let's just mastermind with the whole community so that we can spread the wealth and share the knowledge. So we are talking about planting your database, watering your database, feeding your database, measuring it, harvesting it, prune it, then watching it bloom. So we're going to go back to the beginning. And I've asked Steph to kind of take us into the conversation with planting it. And we get a lot of questions. These are the questions that I've gotten. So I'll throw them out there and let you take it from wherever you want to take it. We're planting our database. What information should go in our database? What's the difference between buckets and tags and how you move people through the process? How are we adding people into our database? How are we getting their information from new hires, or, are we growing our database? I think a lot of people get it from new hires, but they never continue adding to it. So let's kind of go back to the beginning stuff with database. What should be in it? Contact info, tags, and buckets.
Okay, so when I'm talking about the database and when I'm teaching people about the database, you know me, it's always about the 5 steps, but I go back to what's the purpose of the database and what am I trying to get out of it? So I start with purpose, and then I base my buckets or statuses on the purpose, and that way I can treat everybody that's in that particular bucket or status with the same information. I can push the same information out to everybody in that status. So as you're thinking about your database, you're going to have anywhere from probably 4 to 8 statuses that people are going to belong in. And when I say status or bucket, I call them a pipeline. There's about 10 different words people use for them: status, bucket, pipeline, any other words you guys can think of. You can only be in one status or pipeline at a time. Someone can only reside in that one bucket at a time. Now, tags are what you use to differentiate the people within a bucket a little bit for characteristics about that person. So as you're working through your database, and this is where a lot of people get messed up, some specific action happens to move a person from one status to the next status. And so the way I run mine is the first status in the beginning of your pipeline is new. That's brand new. Someone just got added. They registered on one of your websites. They showed up at an open house, whatever it is. Their status until you do something to them is new. So that's your
That
first.
includes like even your sphere and your past clients come in as new.
Not necessarily, because you're going to immediately move them because you have history with them. Okay. So this is brand new. They come in as new. If I attempt to contact them, they move to attempted contact. Right? I've attempted to reach out to them in some way. Now they're in a different bucket because the message now is different. A new message is, hey, you registered on my site. I'd love to get in contact with you, yada, yada, yada. If you've already attempted contact, you don't want to send the same message. Hey, you registered on my site. It's like, hey, I've been trying to reach you, blah, blah, blah. So the message changes with the buckets as you move.
I like the bucket concept. Let me just interject because people do confuse buckets and tags all the time. And to me, I think of it as you can't, if you physically picture a bucket, and you picture the water in the bucket, you're in the bucket. And
You're
then
in the
you
bucket.
pour the water into the next bucket and into the next bucket. I'm a visual person.
Correct.
What
Correct.
are all of your buckets and statuses?
So we go new, attempted contact, contacted, right? I've actually talked to them. Appointment set, like I've set an appointment with them. Nurture, which means I've actually had the appointment. We call it nurture. It could be appointment taken or prospect or whatever you want to call it, but we call it nurture. I've had an appointment with them. Active client, they are under contract or they have a listing with me or they have a signed buyer's representation with me. Active, pending, past. And so if you think about those buckets, some physical thing has happened to move them from one to the other. They answered the phone. Now they're contacted. They signed a representation agreement. They went under contract. So they have a very specific action that moves them. The funny thing about Brivity, which of course most of us use, or a lot of people do use, one of their statuses to me is ridiculous. They have a status of hot. Hot is not a status. How do you become hot? What's the action that creates a hot? I look good? Like, what is hot status? I don't know what that means. So these are for the pretty people.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
So now if you think about it that way, if you think about being in this bucket, your message to everybody in that bucket could be very, very, very structured and very similar because they're all in a similar status. You could send out a message to everybody that's under contract because then they're in the pending bucket and say, hey, we're having a pie event and you guys are all in the middle of buying or selling a house with us and we want you to come. So then
can I back you up before you go further into buckets and tags to define a contact? Maybe we should have started with define a contact.
You can get really wishy-washy. A lot of people do it different ways. We say they have reciprocated an attempt. So we texted them and they texted us back. That's contacted. We emailed them.
Okay, so and what minimal information do you have? Do you have to have the phone and the email, the phone or the email?
We have to have one way to get in contact with them.
One way. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
You have to have
Okay.
at least one method.
going.
Now, the goal is always to try and get all the methods. I want their phone number and their email and their firstborn's birth certificate and all the things. Just kidding. But I want as many things as I can get, their Facebook handle, whatever.
Okay.
So you're always curbing your message to that group of people. And so then the tags help differentiate a little bit within a bucket. So for instance, I have a past client bucket, and within that bucket, I have tags that say invite to local events or out of area, right? I don't want to invite everybody that's moved to Utah to my pie event. So I tag them. They're still a past client. They still belong in that bucket forever until they come back in because they set a new appointment. They'll go back to the new appointment bucket. But I have tags to differentiate. And now when I say a past client bucket, I have out of area or invite to local events. I also have bought or sold with the agent that they bought or sold with. And I have bought or sold in and the year they bought or sold in. Those are tags within that bucket. Everybody in my database that's in a nurture bucket, which means I've had an appointment with them, but they have not yet signed a representation agreement with me. Everybody in that bucket has a priority label, A, B, C, D, or someday maybe, telling me how often I need to reach out to them to get them to hopefully sign a representation agreement. So you're differentiating the people in your buckets. You're going to slightly vary the frequency of the message, but not necessarily the content of the message. I'm still reaching out and trying to get a hold of these people, but I'm varying the intensity.
Love it.
And then you can layer your contacts. You can say, okay, I'm going to send this message out to everybody in my database. If it's just a, hey, if you want a value on your house, you're wondering what values have done in the past year and you want to get an updated CMA, that can go out to everybody. If it's, hey, now's a great time to refinance. You purchased your house 2 years ago with me. Now's a great time to finance. I'm going to send that out to a very select group of people who bought or sold in 2019.
Do you guys have any, if you guys are listening and you have questions for any of us on tags, buckets, statuses, all of that stuff, put it in the comments and we'll answer your questions as we go. Anybody else on the call have other things that you want to talk about around sort of planting your database?
We do the same thing. We have the different statuses. We do have a hot status because that's what Boomtown has. Our hot, we define as we've set an appointment with them, or we have recently had an appointment with them, and they are going to do business in the next 3 months. And then that's sort of our pipeline review is who do you have in your hot, as we do one-on-ones with our agents, who is in the hot status, and do they deserve to stay there, or is it time to move them out or get them to put the pressure on to get them to sign something?
Yeah, so that's like your nurture tag A, right?
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, like that was the same thing with us because Brivity does have a hot status and I can't change the statuses. So we basically, like Elizabeth said, we took what the statuses that we were given, since we can't change them, and we defined them and said, okay, if it's in this bucket, this is what it means. New to us means this. Unqualified to us means we've attempted contact and they have not yet reciprocated. That's just what it means. So whatever statuses they give you, you just define them.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
Takeaway right now is making sure if you're listening to the call, if you don't have your statuses named and defined, as well as what action moves you from bucket or status to status, that needs to be defined and part of the operating procedures of your team. Jess, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that we do the same thing as far as renaming them. And then that's in our operations manual on a kind of a cheat sheet.
Yeah, love that. It's probably something part of your new agents 30 days, right? Learning what those are, because that's really important. How are you guys? Another question that I get is, what does it look like for people coming onto your team, including operations people, not just agents, of getting their database into your database? And how are you growing your database and continuing to plant your database as time goes on?
For us, it depends on their technical ability. Sometimes we have agents join the team who are used to using a CRM, or they actually have a database. And so I will say, just export an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file, send that to me, and I will import it into ours. A lot of times agents don't have that. They have their Google contacts, in which case I will go in have the agent sit next to me, log into their account, pull all of their contacts, do a download with them, and then put them in. It depends on the technical ability of the agent. And we do expect them to cull that list. So even though I may download it, they may have people in there that they never want to work with again. And so we take them out. Or if they never even want to call them, I mean, that's the thing, just because they're in your contacts, if I set them up on a campaign and you have to call them quarterly and you won't pick up the phone and call them, I don't want them in the database. There's no point to it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we have our new agents bring a list on the day one. So we give them the template and we say type in their name and at least one piece of contact info. I'm a millennial, and so I know like most of the time I'll have phone number or Facebook, but not like a home address or email address for them. And so then we spend the first 30 days doing the calls or sending the Facebook messages and asking for those other pieces of contact info so that then they have their list that they are reaching out to, like Elizabeth said, when we have an event or, or asking for reviews or referrals, whatever that may be.
I love that. So that's a day one. Show up day one with your sphere.
Yeah, and it shows their grit, right? If they show up with the list or not, and then I can be like, all right, go get your list before you come back.
Mhm.
And ours is day 7, I think, on our onboarding plan. They get a task that fires. There's a spreadsheet already in their folder in G Drive. That's the template ready for them. And that's a task on day 7 to upload their list. And then they tell us on the list how often they want to reach out. So we have a sphere contact monthly or a sphere contact quarterly. So they just put monthly, quarterly, monthly, quarterly, monthly, and then we upload it into the system, apply the tags and launch the plans. And so they're just going to start getting the tasks. And now if someone gives me 200 names, I go and I do 10 a day for them instead of all 200 in a day. So all the tasks don't fire on the same day. They're going to get 120 check-in calls today and they'll never do it. So I just do 10 a day so that they start calling 10 people a day.
Good tip there.
So a small tidbit that I got from David Breckheimer recently when we were discussing database, because we do something similar on the Excel template. And we also use code tags. So a code tag to us is a descriptor of the person, maybe what their job is, or whether they were a buyer or seller, like a past buyer or seller. They're an educator, things like that. And so his tip was, which I'm totally going to implement on our template, we've added in where those descriptors are already a drop down. And so as the agents or anybody who's filling one of those out, they can select those codes off of that drop down, and we're not going back and chasing for those tags later.
I love that, because that's actually, we'll talk about that at the end. That's kind of the very last step, but the personalization, our ability to automate and still be personal is becoming more and more important. And those tags are integral to being able to do that. So I love that. Okay. And then are your ops people showing up on day 1 or day 7 with their sphere as well when they join your team?
They will be now. Like, that's a great idea.
I mean, it's in our onboarding plan for everybody, but I don't expect them to come with 200 names. But if they can give me 30 or 40,
If
that's
they come
great.
with their sphere,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the number is. If you guys are listening, I would encourage you, our clients all have financial goals outside of, your salary or whatever it is on your team. If you're a licensed agent, you should be referring to your team, and hopefully your team is the best team in the area. And as well as now, all these people in the Ops Boss community that you can refer to across the country. So hopefully your sphere is in there and you want them well taken care of. What about, how are you growing your database? Okay, I come onto the team day 1, day 7, I throw all my stuff in there. I'm throwing in open houses and whatever, and we're adding leads into our database. How are we continuing to grow our sphere database? You guys have any systems around that?
All the things, the circle prospecting, ours are doing, door knocking, like they're still doing it, wearing their name tag to the grocery store. I mean, they're doing all the things and they're just adding people to their database on a daily basis. And they
So
fill out a job
what does
form.
that look like? Yeah, thank you. That's what
They fill out a job form. I do not allow my agents to add anybody to my database. So they fill out a jot and they tell us exactly. And one of the questions that we ask them on the jot is, how did you meet this person? I don't ask them the source. The question is, how did you meet this person? And if they say, he's on my son's baseball team, then I tag that with starting sphere so that when they leave, that goes with them. They didn't meet them in the course of business on Anderson Hicks Group. But if they say, I met him at an open house, or I met them circle prospecting or door knocking, that goes into a shared group that when they leave, it stays with us and they can take them with them. But we will also keep it because they met them in the course of doing business with our team, and we will continue to market to that person. And that's specified in our team agreement, exactly how everyone's going to be handled that gets added to the database when you join our team.
Love that. That's super clear. I had a question. Elizabeth, you were going to say something, I think.
We add, when we invite our sphere to events, we ask them to bring a friend. So if they know somebody that, you know, hey, we just had our pumpkin patch event and we invited our sphere and past clients and said, hey, if you know someone that would like to come, bring them. And then when we get them to register through a jot form, we capture their information that way.
Do you guys have any kind of standards or suggestions around numbers for people continuing to add to their sphere? Because what I find is on a lot of teams, it's stagnant. You're adding leads or people that are hot, you know, I'm going to work with them now, but you're forgetting like, hey, it's Christmas time. COVID has opened up the world and I'm going to meet a bunch of new people at a Christmas party. Am I thinking about adding those people to the database? Like, do you have any numbers around it? Or is it just sort of like you just remind them periodically?
I mean, we report the numbers every day. Like it's on our hustle board, number of people added to the database. It goes out every single day. So it's on a number in front of their face every single day.
And does someone on your team own adding a certain number to your database every year? When I was on my team, I always had a personal goal as the COO for the team that the team would add X number of people to the database.
No, nobody does. But I mean, we do stuff like neighborhood garage sales where we'll add 150 or 200 people to our database for each garage sale. And the year before, last year in 2020, we probably added 1,200 names to our database through garage sales. So we try and do stuff like that where we'll get massive bulk numbers in, but then we also just hope that they add them as they go about the course of doing business.
Hannah, what were you going to say?
Well, it's not like we have it all together, but I think it's good to share. So recently in a coaching call, you and I were looking at our numbers. So our team's highly database driven, and we had a goal set for how many transactions from our database this year, and we actually are not hitting that goal. And so when you and I looked at it, we're like, yeah, we have the numbers according to, if you've read the MREA, we have the numbers to get to that amount of transactions, but that just means conversion's different right now with what's going on, you know, in our market. And so you really challenged me to say, how are we adding to it? And how are we making it systematic when we know the numbers are there, right? We have to keep it as a moving effort, not just to say, hey, we're good. We're doing our 36 touch plan and it should all happen now.
Yeah. I think that's kind of why the whole like plant it, water it, feed it, like it's a dynamic. Your database isn't just a stagnant thing. And I see it become stagnant for many teams, and we have to continue to do that. Yeah, I think this question comes up a lot. Thank you, Sabrina. Are you having your team or admin contact their sphere as they're adding them to the database to ensure they are opting in to receive messages going forward for compliance? How are you guys handling that?
Yes.
We do it via phone call, right? Because they are like your mom or your friend or your neighbor. And so we let them know like, hey, we invite our sphere to our client events. I don't know if everyone does that, but we, you know, kind of call it being part of our community. Like they get these benefits even before they purchase with us. And so they call to say, hey, we want to send you some items of value and invite you to some free events. And we want to make sure that's okay and get that confirmation from the beginning.
Same. We call all ours friends and clients events. We don't call them client events just because we do like a large amount of people that come to it. Probably at least half are not clients, their sphere.
And we're the opposite. We only invite the clients because it's a massive invite list. I mean, we had 1,200 people come to our client summer events. So if they don't want a friend,
yeah,
you're like, please don't.
Are you doing anything up front to qualify people as being approved to put into your database, or you're just firing them all in?
Well, I mean, when the agents go and do give us their 200 list, we tell them that, you know, make sure you've talked to these people and they want to be included in our list. So, but like if we do a neighborhood garage sale, no, we're like having them do a jot form with information, registering stuff, and then we just put them in our database.
Okay, so I think we addressed, let me go back to, I'm going to go to measure it and back, and then we'll come back to water it. So measure it, we had questions around, are you measuring your database? Do you know how many people are in your database? I love, because we didn't plan this. This was casual mastermind. I didn't tell you guys to prepare that. And yet you guys knew exactly how many people were in your database. I think a lot of people don't know that. Do you know what percentage are repeat clients? Do you know how many people in your database have referred clients to you? Those are some things we used to track. Do you know how many you're adding daily, weekly, monthly, annually? Do you guys set goals around that, or you just are tracking that? What does that look like on each of your teams?
We're just tracking it. So like we have 668 deals closed so far this year, and 170 of those are from past clients, or referrals from past clients or Sphere that have referred business to us. So we just keep track of it, and we know the numbers. We're always striving for. If you read the MRE, like Hannah was talking about, like you're supposed to get, if you have 3,000 past clients and Sphere that refer, like really close Sphere, you should be getting 10%. You should be getting 300 deals from those people a year if you have 3,000 of them. Now I told you we had 16,000 in our database. That's total in our database. We got rid of all the crap. So we took 50,000, we went down to 15,000, and now we're back up to over 16,000. Of those, we only have about 3,200 that are actual past clients or really close Sphere. And then how many deals are you getting out of that? It should be 10%. So 300, and we do have 60% repeat and referral. So we have the 10% of the total 3,000 in our database. We should have
I think that's another area where you have to define, like you call it really close Sphere. For our team, we used to define it as, if you asked the person, would, you know, if their sister was doing business, would they refer their sister to you? That was kind of how we called it. That's how we defined really close Sphere in terms of those numbers, because you might have 27 million people in your database, but if half of them aren't going to do business with you.
Yeah, I just know that guy. I just know him.
Right. Or like that kid's parent was like, we're on a soccer team together or whatever, but their best friend has another team, and that's who they would sell their house with.
Right.
And we don't count that. Yeah. So I just wondered, Elizabeth, what were you going to say?
Typically, what we generally set a goal around is having the percentage of our sales come from Sphere. And we do our best to keep that around 75%. This year, we actually ended up at 65% because we made a large investment in online advertising. And so a bigger chunk came from online people we don't know, actually. So expenses kind of went up in that area, and our COI went down as we sort of switched focus. So that's something to remember for going into next year, is that, okay, where do we want that balance to be? Or do we still want COI to be 75%?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important discussion, and it vacillates for us on our team. It vacillated depending on how small and how large our team was, how many units we were doing, how many lead levers we had, what your value proposition is. You know, are you helping people learn how to fish, or are you giving them fish? You know, all of that is going to affect your percentages. Hannah, did you have something you were going to add there?
Well, when you talk about tracking, one of the big things for us that we've been working on is, so we know the numbers that Stephanie's talking about, and what we really realized is how good's the data that we're pulling that from. And so that's where that cleanup, and I don't think I'm jumping ahead to one of your questions, but that cleanup's been so important of like, if I have, we have 3,500 past clients too, because my owners have been in the business for 25 years, but we got to looking at some of those past clients, and, you know, they've opted out of emails, they've moved and used someone else, their phone number's bad, whatever it may be. So we've been slowly going through each one and reaching out and saying, can we get other pieces of contact? So we've started tagging the full contacts differently, because we want to really say, okay, of those 3,500, maybe we're going to keep them in there if we have one piece of valid contact info, but what amount do we actually have that are full? And can we really focus on increasing those that can get the full 36 touch plan? Because we know every other person's getting like a 12 touch plan if they only have, you know, one piece of contact info.
Great point. Really important point. All right. So let's talk about watering it, because you just talked about touch plan. Question that comes in all the time. What's in your touch plan? How many touches do you have? How are you watering your database? What are you doing for client events? Like that, literally, we could do
All
a
the-
whole 8-hour class on, but let's just kind of start with maybe, I think people hear touch plan and feel really intimidated. I see two sets of things. I see the people that hardly have anything and the people that have 120 touches. Where do you guys fall on that? What does that look like for your teams?
Ours is 56 touches for the highest level. The lowest level is 12 touches, right? They just get our viral marketing once a month email. That's what they get. If they're in the database and they're in the lowest level, that's what they get, is our viral marketing once a month. Then you layer on top of that, if they've had this, then they get this. If they've had this, then they get client events. If we do 4 client events a year with 4 touches around each client event, that's 24 touches. So if you're a past client, you're automatically getting the 12 plus the 24 plus the monthly check-in calls, 12 calls. So you're just layering, you're taking these buckets and you basically have a touch plan for each bucket. And some people are getting layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of touches. So the highest level gets 56. And I think probably the biggest misconception with people in touch plans is it's like, I can put it in a system and set it and forget it. And that's not, it doesn't work that way. So if you have a client event, those are not being driven out of some database system. You're pulling the list and then you're making the calls. It's not like some drip thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions is people think a touch plan is just, I'm going to put all this stuff together and then I'm going to hit go and then it's just going to go. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And we know, like, what's the best contact? Face to face, the next is phone. Like, email is the lowest one on the list. And I think a lot of people default their touch plan to email and miss a lot of opportunity to connect with people. And we know it's not about the client event. It's not just the face-to-face, it's the calls before and it's the calls after, and it's the calls after to all the people that didn't come to invite them to the next event and make sure they want to be on your VIP list still, right? That's where the referrals come in.
Yeah,
what else do you guys
Christy
want to add?
did. Oh, sorry, I was going to add to that about the phone calls. I sat in a class at like family reunion years ago, and they're like, raise your hand if you have a touch plan. It's like a large majority of the room. And then he said, you know, keep your hand up if you're doing your 4 calls per year, which is said to be a very important part of your call plan. And there was a very small percentage that stood up. And so I think if you need a place to start, just start like with making end of year, like client appreciation calls or wishing them a happy new year. It's like the most tedious and it's uncomfortable a lot of times for the agent, but they're the most valuable, right? It's reconnecting with those people so they don't just randomly get a postcard from you and be like, oh yeah, my realtor from 5 years ago, right? We have to be in relationship with those people to be able to drip on them.
That's good. That was a good boom right there. We need to be in relation. It's about relationships. We're in a relationship business. We're not in a transactional business. We're in a relationship business. And you said something that made me have a question, which is, how are you guys handling people in your database that did business with an agent who's not on your team anymore when it comes to phone calls and all that stuff? Assuming that they didn't take it with them, it wasn't their sphere.
Yeah, I was just going to say it goes back to the buckets that the tags that we labeled them as starting sphere left, we deleted them. So it's the joint contacts. When someone leaves our team in our offboarding plan, we take and we tag all those with closed with former agent, right? The agent left the team. We get rid of the agent tag. The closed with Brandon's now gone out of my system. They're all retagged with closed with former agent. My ISAs adopt those agents, those clients. They all get assigned out to the ISAs, and now the ISAs nurture them indefinitely. They take over the touch plan. They're the ones inviting them to client events. They're doing all that until they can get them set up with a new agent because they want to do business again, and then they go back in with a new agent. And we literally just had Liz told me yesterday or the day before, we're doing our pie event. We do it in December, and we've had like 76 RSVPs from clients that are with agents that are no longer on our team.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
because we all know this, the NAR statistic, whatever that is, 89% or whatever, of people would do business again with their agent, but their agent doesn't stay in touch. So,
You know, that's one of the reasons our Rainmaker specifically has contact with everybody that closes on or around their closing day, and he's doing check-in calls along the way here and there. It's in the transaction checklist, a point after inspections for the Rainmaker to specifically connect with the client to say, hey, how are things going? Are things good with the transaction coordinator? Are things good with the agent? So that if that agent ever leaves, the client goes back to the Rainmaker, who is acting as our ISA at the moment and doling out leads or whatever that comes through. He's the first pass through until we hire for that position. So yes, it's still important that someone take responsibility and ownership of those clients when the agent who serviced it leaves, so that those people continue to come back, because they didn't necessarily just do business with the agent, they did business with your team. And all of the services that the team provided originated with the Rainmaker. Like if that's the true leader, if it's their name on the team, right? It should be someone there connecting, or someone who's calling on behalf of Rainmaker.
Yeah,
And
so I think there has to transition, right? Because on a smaller team, maybe the Rainmaker's doing it. It may not be scalable as you grow. In the interim, I see a lot of admin teams doing it. So Hannah, I think you guys do that, right?
Yeah, and we just started that this year. We were reassigning those people to other new agents, but I just didn't feel like we had enough stickiness. So yeah, we've been having our ops team. And so then we'll have like a call day for a pie event, and the ops team then gets to participate in the contest. And those are probably the one calls they don't really mind. It's not like lead gen because it's someone who already knows us. Sometimes they've already worked with that person, right? One of my admins been with me for 5 years, so she knows a lot of the people even. And they really enjoy the conversations, and they get a lot of reservations and things like that for our events, which is great.
It's a fun call to make because you're totally offering
you're
them
giving something.
value.
Yeah.
Totally fun. I love it. And I love them that they participate in your call day or your call night, whatever you're doing. It's a team building activity. You know, we often expect our agents to step out of their comfort zone, and we're not always the ones that are willing to step out of ours. And when we do, it empowers everybody to be successful in that area. So I love that. What else? Is there anything else around client events? Plan? How many people often ask, how many calls should I make? How many emails? Like, what does your client touch program look like?
Oh, it's varied. Like it's totally varied. What the different, I mean, it's calls, it's emails, it's text, it's postcards. Ours are 4 different things: calls, emails, text, postcards. So on our client events, they all get a postcard. They all get a call. They all get a text. They all get a follow-up call. Like that's the 4 calls around every client event. So we totally vary how we do it. But the one thing I was going to say, none of this matters if your database isn't clean. Like none of this matters. None of it. You can't set up a good touch program. You can't give metrics. You can't, like, before you do anything, if you take anything from this call today, go clean up your database. It's so important to have a clean database. And it's so daunting sometimes. And people are like, oh, but if you can't grab a list in 1 minute or less, I could pull you a list of everybody that needs to be invited to a past client event. Everybody in 1 minute or less. You should be able to do that. That's how clean your database has to be. In 1 minute or less, you should be able to tell me everybody that bought or sold a home in 2012 that you now want to send a mailer to and say, hey, the market's crazy. You bought at a really great time. Like, let's sell your house now. So before you do anything, clean your database.
Okay, so there's something big around this, because when you are a new or newer operations person, you just got hired as an executive assistant, and you have a leader who has a database of 1,000 people, and you know none of them, and none of them are tagged correctly. Half of them aren't sourced correctly. And the Rainmaker, the lead person, lead agent, doesn't have time to sit down with you and go through every single person and tell you who they are. Then what? Because I get this question a lot.
If it was me, the very first thing I would do is go pull up all my closed files and clean that up with closed files. I'd get all my past clients and I'd get them all tagged. Every past client. The rest, I don't even know if I'd worry about. Honestly, I would just leave it. I would say, okay, my past client database is clean. And now I have a system to make sure every single new person that comes in and every past client gets tagged correctly and is in the right bucket. And so if he has 1,000 people and maybe he has 150 past clients, I would call my database clean. I'd say my database is clean at this point. I'm going to disregard the 850. They can be on whatever lame drip campaign I've got going on. Just let that keep going. But my 150 are going to be on every event invite. They're going to be up through everything. And I'm going to make sure every new person that enters my database comes in the right place and moves to the right place all the way down the system. That's how I'd clean it up if it was me.
That's what I did when I was new.
That's what I did 23
Ron
years ago.
had some of his, and I just went into MLS and looked up every single address that I could possibly find and say, is this a past client?
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of different ways you got to become like spidey sense,
Super
right?
sleuth,
You're like searching tax records. You're like just calling, whatever you have to do to clean it up.
Yeah.
And it is a really daunting, overwhelming task, no matter whether you're starting fresh as the new A or new EA, or you're the person like Stephanie who went from 30,000 down to 15 or whatever the big number was.
50,000 to 15, yeah.
So and Hannah went through this with her team cleaning up the database all year. What you measure grows. And also you have to be able to look back and see your progress. So watch the numbers, count the numbers, set a goal. How many am I going to do each week? And post it on the wall. Our database now has this, now it has this, now it has this. Now I feel good about what I'm doing and I can see my progress.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I say something on that too?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Christy, so if you're getting ready to start that process, I had all of my ops team, we kind of divided and conquered, but we had 3,500 past clients. And Stephanie, I love that you said ignore the rest. So when I said 16,000, I still have almost 12,000 in Brevity that like, we don't really know what they go to, but they're not past clients that we're ignoring for now. So in that 3,500, we tagged all of them of like needs updated. And then it was this like fun feeling of we replaced that tag with updated and we could slowly see those numbers moving and they would report in how many they did each week and we could see the percentage left. And so we've been able to celebrate every month, like, hey, we're at 80% done. So we know for December, we have 20% left and we will make sure by December 31st, we're done. That's because awesome. It's a really tangible number to work towards.
Yeah. And those of you who are Keller Williams who are in command, you can see that right in command. So,
And the other thing I was going to say too is actually the very first step is anybody who doesn't have contact information, delete them. Just delete them. You don't have a phone number. You don't have an email. You have all kinds of people that are going to end up in your database. It's just going to be some Joe Schmo's name and that's all you've got. Just delete them. It's just causing garbage in your database and it's creating mess in your head. Just get rid of them. So if you had 1,000 people, probably 150 don't have any contact information. Now you're down to 850. Now go get your past clients and you'll start cleaning it up.
Yeah. 80-20 rule, right? We don't have to pay attention to all that. Pay attention to your top 20%.
Yep.
20% of your
pull them out
like 80% of your business.
Yeah, we pulled out when we did our big giant thing. I pulled out anybody who had never reciprocated contact. I had an email or a phone number, but they had never reciprocated contact. I didn't want them in my database. I pulled them out. They're on lists. A new agent joins my team and they need somebody to call. Here's a list. There's 35,000 people on it. Have at it. I mean, it's like handing a phone book.
If you guys go to our blog, if I think about it, or Sheila, you can remind me or you can post it. There's a blog post that we did about if you're transitioning into Brevity, and you may not be using Brevity, but if you scroll to the bottom of that blog post is Stephanie's steps that she used to clean out. She had 4 databases merging into one and took the opportunity to scrub it, and it's Steph's tips on how to scrub your database. So that would be really helpful, I think. Okay, so let's talking about, all right, we got the plant, we planted the seeds, we're nurturing it, we're doing our client events and communicating to people. And maybe it's been a while, or maybe we're setting our goals around 2022. How are you guys pruning your database? How are you looking and saying, okay, well, this is what the return is we got last year, and we want to get a better return this year. What does that look like? How are you tweaking your plan? How are you tweaking the database? It's winter, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do it all the time. We redid our review system for our past clients, and we're redoing that again this year to try and get even a better return on our number of reviews we get. So every year we're looking at what we're doing and trying to make it a little bit better. Your systems are never done. So if you decide, okay, 10%, I want 10% of my database to be my repeat business, and maybe you hit 10%, we're at like 13% right now. Next year, I want to go to 15%. I want 15%. And so we'll put it 135 together around that 2% increase, just a little 2% increase. How do I get that? How do I go systematically get that? And so you just build a 135 around it, and you have really specific measurable things you're going to do in order to drive that number.
I love it. So for those of you who are listening, we actually talked about this with Elizabeth and Kelly on group coaching call yesterday. A 135, for those of you who don't know, is 1 goal, 3 priorities, 5 strategies for each priority. And GPS, it gives you direction, just like a GPS in your car, about where you're going. And you can use that as a project tool for anything. I need a GPS for recruiting. I need a GPS for getting more business out of my database. And then just brainstorm with your team around that and fill that in. What else were you guys going to add about pruning your database, improving your metrics?
Yeah, so we've recently started doing the call days that I mentioned. Part of that's to overcome just the separation of getting back into the groove of getting together in the office and whatnot. But it's, taking the opportunity to call the people that are missing the contact info, like I talked about earlier. So in Command, we can see the columns really easily to be like, all right, who's missing what information? So I think constantly looking at, has someone moved? Like every time we get a mailer back, we type in the system like, hey, their address changed, they use someone else, and we still reach out to them and try to get them back into our touch plan, even if they've moved. With the reviews, we've started tracking how many, like for each agent, how many people have left a review that year and how many haven't, so that the agents can be more proactive. So also on our call day next week, we've said, okay, let's target those people who haven't left a review, ask them quickly before the year to leave that. So just being intentional to get as much out of that database as we can.
Love it. I actually went through it one time on my team's database, and I just literally went through the database and looked through the notes, and I would do 10 contacts a day and see what the notes said. And all the ones that said that they bought, or we already sold our house, or we already bought our house, I looked them up, see, did they use another agent? I found $400,000 in gross commission income of our past clients and Sphere doing business with someone else. And that compelled my team to start picking up the phone when they weren't picking up the phone before.
Yeah.
So that was a pruning technique that we used.
And we do pipeline audits. Like we do pipeline audits once a week for agents. Like there's my VAs are running this pipeline audit to make sure their pipeline's clean. Everybody that's in a nurture should have an A, B, C, or D priority tag, that they're getting calls around those tags. And we're saying, okay, if it's an A priority tag, you should have had a call in the last 3 days. I have 10 people, Adam has 10 people that are A priorities, and 3 of those have not gotten a call in the past 3 days. That pipeline audit gets sent to him and the sales manager once a week. And that's their topic of conversation in their one-on-one. So we're demanding a clean pipeline at the same time. We're trusting them to be good stewards of the leads we give them.
I love that. And for those of you who don't have, I know a lot of times people are listening on the call and they're like, well, my team's not doing 800 units a year or 700 units a year like Stephanie's. Maybe you're on a smaller team. I think this is an awesome place where operations people can step in and really help their agents achieve their goals and take that off your rainmaker's back. You love statistics, you love the pipeline, you know the system, pull those pipeline reports. I have some clients who are now alternating we call them coaching calls instead of accountability calls or pipeline audits. I wanted to be something positive, and they're alternating every other week. Rainmaker meets with the agents to talk about whatever they need to talk about, skills and contracts and all that stuff. And every other week, they're talking about habits and the pipeline and things that make you successful as an agent with the ops director. So you can help in that area. All right, well, before we wrap up, and I don't know whether you guys are at this place, Watch It Bloom. So I think it was at Mega Camp. I don't remember, it was Mega Camp last year, or it may have been Family Reunion. Gary and Jay did an awesome database seminar, webinar, whatever. And the concept of automation and personalization, and what does that look like at the next level? What steps are you taking to position your team to be able to really get personal with your touch plans so that you're reaping the benefits of that and keeping the relationship? You're like,
So I know what you're talking about, and I am excited to get there. So I think a couple of things, right? When you talk about personalizing, it's like, do you know the location? Can you pull your database by specific neighborhoods, specific cities, so that you're communicating with them around that? Even the type of buyer or seller that they may be, right? So how would you target a group that might be downsizing in the next 5 years? Part of that's around like age, right? When you age and stage of people that might want to invest. So as we talk about tagging, we say, think about any system with the end in mind. So if you're going to be cleaning up your database, this would be a great time to think through what are some future things we might want to do and what tags would be needed that we can start with today. For someone like myself, it's like, oh, let's think about it. And then we'll have to go back through those 3,500. But if you've not cleaned up yet, now would be a great opportunity to get those in there.
That's one of the reasons why we've always tagged them with the year they bought or sold, so we could actually go back and market around a particular thing. We know people that bought in 11, 12 probably got a really good deal on their house, and now we can go back. We know the people that bought in 17 and 18 may need to refinance now. We can go back and market to those years. So
yeah, and I think it comes back to the relationship thing. Everybody's database is different, right? And our business was very much like yours, Hannah. It was very sphere-based. It was in a small geographic area where we had high relationship with the people in our database. So we used to tag with things like, did they have dogs? Did they have cats? Because there used to be a great dog show every year that we would invite people to. Or, are they on the waiting list for the local swim club, or as personal as you can get.
Yeah.
What about automation though? Because then I'm listening to that thinking, gosh, that feels overwhelming to create content that's going out so personal, in a personal way. Have you guys moved up in that automation level yet? Still working on it?
So I think parts of the touch plan are automated. We can automate the call reminders, the birthday reminders, all of those things. We do birthday cookies. So basically we just export a list and a company sends those for us. So it's it's like 30 minutes a month of labor. We have HomeBot for monthly updates on home valuations. That's all automated. It's like a one-time import and that's done. So I think those pieces are. And then, it's probably thinking through even more how we automate it at a higher level.
yeah, and we do. We set 6 months in. Once they've closed on a house, they're a buyer. 6 months in, we have a task that fires for the agent to call and let them know we're going to set them up on home valuations, because they all want to know what their home value is doing. And then we set them up, and that just drips them once a month. They get an updated home valuation out of Brivity, which is super easy to set up. So there's things like that, but like mass automation, we haven't gotten there yet. We're still very much a call, text, email.
I was going to say, and I think that next level of automation is going to be really important as we're moving forward, having automation that can trigger communication that has so much data that you don't even have the data, but it has access to data that tells you, oh, this person's going to sell, this person's going to move soon, whatever.
Right. And there are companies out there that do that. Like we have offers.com, which that's what they do. It's predictive analytics. They basically are telling us these 20 people are the most likely to move in this neighborhood in the next year. Go after them. And oftentimes what we'll find is those people are already in our database. And now we just know who to concentrate the calls on.
I'm pretty sure Anderson Hicks has the entire Idaho Falls in your database by this point.
Well, no, we only have
What's the population of Idaho Falls?
About 85,000.
Oh, and you only have 16,000. Oh,
know.
that stuff, he's blacker.
But we did have 50,000. Remember, I got rid of a bunch of them.
So almost the whole city.
That's awesome. Okay, what else did we not hit? I don't know if there's any other questions that popped into the group. Is there anything else we want to make sure that people know about database?
I was going to say, people often ask me how many tags they should have. And my answer is always as few as possible, but as many as you need, right? Don't go creating 87 million tags. It's super hard to maintain and to keep. And oftentimes you'll create a tag and then you'll be like, what was this one for again? I don't remember what this was. Mine are all really organized. So I group mine. All my ones are my priority tags. So it says 1-A priority, 1-B priority, 1-C priority. My 2s are missed opportunity. My 3s are closed. So I group them all together in buckets. Well, don't confuse those with the other buckets.
Yeah.
I group them all together in groups. And then I make sure that if I have people in this status, I've clearly defined if you're in this status, what tags you should have on you. So if you're in a nurture status, you must have a priority tag. If you're in a past client status, you must have the past client tags. That way you keep it really clean. And then just make sure within your system, whatever system you're using, it's got triggers and reminders for you to update the tags as they move through the process, because you will not remember to do it through memory. So when we close a deal, one of the tacit fires is to go remove the priority tag and add the past client tags.
And Stephanie,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was gonna say, I know she has this and that's kind of what she's talking through, but whether it's your ops manual or a separate document, we have like our tagging rules. And I say in that document, like, what does each tag mean? Because sometimes I've forgotten and I didn't have that document before. And then also like, what are the rules? If it's sphere, what ones are they allowed to have and not allowed to have? And if they're a past client, which ones belong to them, or if they're a prospect. And Stephanie, I had taken your outline. That's how we kind of defined it, but that's been making it so much easier when I have to pull other people in, like ops people, and train them, have this document. I'm like, here, go update these contacts with these tags.
Love it. For
One
those of
question
you
I
guys,
get real quick is, do you delete people from your database? Like completely? Do you delete people?
Yeah, I do. Like if they are super pissed off and they're mad about something and they're cussing. I had the one guy that called and left a message and he was cussing, and we just closed his deal and we just archive.
Okay, but it's not completely gone from the database.
No, because even if you archive or trash it, you can still find it.
Yes, because if they call you back, you want to remember why you don't want to do business with that person.
They've got all the tags. Do not call, do not contact.
Right. Yes.
Or like if they die, Elizabeth, because I've even been like, why is that person on the database? And then I'm like, oh yeah, they passed away and I forgot, but I can find it in archive.
Yes.
Yeah, I see every time I type in on Brivity, I type in to tag somebody with my last name, and my mother-in-law comes up and she passed away. And I'm like, I really wish I could take her out of here, but she's still in there. So Donna, I know you're writing down. If you haven't taken our Systems Are Sexy class, this is one of the topics that actually Stephanie shares all of her tags and buckets and definitions and all of that stuff. She's teaching January, what is it, 28th, 29th, something like that.
The last Thursday, Friday.
I'm also teaching 10 Secrets of a Mega EA, January 1920 virtually with Pacific Coast time for one of the first times ever. Speaking of times, I want to encourage you, if you are the person who's overwhelmed, I know I have this big project. Hannah was there earlier this year. Like, where do I even start with this? Stephanie, we have a slide that's my favorite slide in your Systems Are Sexy class, which is called Rome Wasn't Built in a Day. So if you were going to start through this mess, where would you start and how long would you say it would probably take you, depending on your size of database, obviously?
When we did our database cleanup, we did it in two parts. We did it to import it into Brivity. That took Sean and I together, like the two of us, really smart people, fully concentrated, door closed. Sean's my rainmaker, super, super smart guy. And he knows all of the shortcuts in Excel to make Excel do a lot of the duplicate search and everything. We spent about probably 25 hours, the two of us, so 50 man hours just to get it clean so we could import it. And then when I built my touch program, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 90 days.
And you already had terms defined and actions defined and all of that. So if you don't have that, you have to add time onto that. I don't want you guys to think you have to walk out and have this project done by the end of December, because that's not how it rolls.
I would say if you set aside a quarter and you made this your one thing for a quarter and you worked on it 2 hours a day, if you dedicate one thing time, right? Do it while your lead gen's going on. My one thing time from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock while everybody's lead genning, you could get it done in a quarter. You could get it cleaned up and get your touch plan going, a basic touch plan going. You could have a clean database with a touch plan in a quarter.
I love it. And that'll completely transform your business in 2022. So
100%.
we're out of time. I know this could be literally, we could have sat here for all 8 hours. Thank you guys for taking time. Thank you guys who joined us live. We will put this up. This will stay in the group and we'll put it up on YouTube, and we'll see you back in the group. If you guys have other topics you want us to mastermind or join in with us on masterminding, just message me, Christy at opsbosscoaching.com. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you guys.
Thanks.